Welcome back to Les Schwab Tire Center's Outdoor GPS, presented by Fisherman's Marine and Outdoor.
Now, like we were talking about prior to doing our Chevy Silverado Tech Tip of the Week, we briefly touched on drift fishing, okay? Now, first thing I'm going to say is for a lot of you that might be new to steelhead fishing, you can find multiple videos on YouTube and just type in drift fishing for steelhead and you'll see somebody actually, there's a couple of them that I've seen over the years that can help you. Just kind of mess with those and you'll see. Drift fishing is what's called feel, and it is a very much more technical way of catching steelhead than a bobber dog in the setup or bobber and jig or whatever it might be. It's not as technical, I don't know if I would say, as throwing a spoon or a spinner. Okay, I could be wrong there, my own opinion. But drift fishing, it's all about feel. And it's certainly something that has fallen to the wayside the last 10 or 15 years. Why do you think that is?
Ease. It's easier to fish a float, and floats are more effective, except for in certain conditions.
I was going to say they are certainly more effective, but there are certain situations, deeper water, faster water, different tail outs where you will get outfished by somebody drift fishing that knows what they're doing, as opposed to having a float. Now, that being said, it's a deadly effective way that you can manipulate too to work in all those situations that a float is very, very effective in, right? Now, if you can feel and do things the right way, drift fishing can be very effective in all situations. That's why we did it for so long.
The feel that you said is the biggest key, you know, and you got to have a sensitive rod. I mean, you know, when I was growing up, started out with a fiberglass trout pole.
You
know, and as I got better and better rods, I got more efficient at catching them because you could feel that subtle bite.
As opposed to just being a rock or getting hung up or sliding over.
Right. Originally, it was if your line stopped, you set the hook. Mostly it was a snag.
Right into it, by the way.
But with a good sensitive rod, you can flip it out there and you can walk it through and you can actually feel even when it's a snag or a fish. And you can sometimes lift it over that snag or whatever.
Are you a slinky guy or pencil head guy?
I prefer a slinky. Some of the lower reaches of the coastal rivers, that's pea gravel, I like pencil head.
Gotcha. Because you can feel that. It's a different feel, everyone. It's very different.
Definitely,
You'll get a lot more instantaneous tick, 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 tick with that pencil lead than you will, say, a slinky, where it'll be more of a slide or a little bit more gradual. Again, you could argue both ways which one's more effective. It's all about what you feel and how you feel it. That's important, right?
It was a game. The slinky was a game changer for me.
It really was.
When it was invented.
Well, we went, I mean, geez, man, we're talking you almost had to hit the dump button there, buddy. I'm sorry. 70s going into the 80s, we went from pencil lead to bouncing betties. Okay, you remember those things?
I never really fished with those. But
we fished, my dad was huge into those because he loved, his theory was, it'll bounce over those rocks, you won't get hung, because I was a kid, right? I'm getting hung up all the time, and it was my notch for Dad. Dad, I need you to tie another knot. I mean, he got to the point, and it really did. It helped me become better as a drift fisherman, because it would literally be more difficult to get hung up, but I couldn't feel anything, right? It didn't feel right. So when I got a little bit older, like you're saying, a little bit fancier rods, I think it was an Abu Garcia graphite rod, an
Graphite
8.6.
Eagle Claw was what I got, and then the first year I got that rod, I caught 3 fish. I fished 2 years without catching steelhead. Hooked one and lost it in 2 years. Beginning of the 3rd year, I caught one, and then 2 more after I got a little bit more sensitive of a rod.
It's one of the, it's so, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because the feel is so important. I know I got to cut to a break. Braid or mono when you're drift fishing?
Mono.
See, this is where we disagree. I'm going to disagree with them on that one. For one simple purpose, and maybe if we have the time, we'll talk about that when we come back from this break. Don't go anywhere. We're talking with David Johnson, owner-operator of David Johnson's Guide Service. We're just talking winter steelhead. We'll be right back. We actually have a question from Brian in Tillamook. We're going to see if we can get that question up for Dave when we come back from this break. Don't go anywhere.